Minister of Sports, Arts and Culture Nathi Mthethwa has decided to review the decision to erect a 22 million rand monumental flag. Now, earlier this week, Mthethwa defended the decision, insisting that the project aimed to raise foundational principles of the country's democracy as enshrined in the Constitution. The flag was to be erected at the Freedom Park Heritage Site in Pretoria as a symbol of unity and democracy. It sparked outrage, with many saying that it's a waste of taxpayers' money. All right, let's then, of course, that decision by the minister directing the department to review its process where the flag is concerned. And let's look at then whether or not these particular monuments, in fact, or symbols can foster unity. Let's speak to Tshwane University of Technology Tourism lecturer Dr. Unathi Sonwabile, Henama, as well as Madisebo University Research Institute Director Dr. Zulumathabo, Zulu. Thank you so much to you both for your time. I cannot help but begin with, of course, the developing story today, Dr. Zulu. We see the minister moving to then say the department needs to review this particular flag project. Of course, there's been public outcry. Was it a good move?
Yes, I think it was a good move indeed. And it also, to his credit, it shows that he is also responsive to the sentiments of people, to the outcry out there. So he's really acting like somebody who represents the people. So it's a very good move. Dr.
Henama, for you?
I think it's important to indicate that government at least listened. I think the age of social media has also been very, very important in trying to create these exchanges of information and discourse with public representatives, which obviously is good for a democracy and a developing democracy in South Africa.
And Dr. Zulu, I'm keen to find out from you, because the department talks about this project and says it shouldn't be viewed in isolation, but it should be viewed as part of ongoing efforts to deepen social cohesion, to ensure that we do achieve it at some point as the country. Does this help at all?
Well, you see, cohesion means that we are united in South Africa. We are together. But actually, I think that the time that we were together was 1994. But 20 years later, we are more polarized than we were. So I think in terms of cohesion, I think they should have been looking at projects that would kind of help to solidify. There's no point in celebrating a symbol of unity when the unity is not actually there in actuality.
So for you then, Dr. Zulu, what would be those projects that government then needs to put into play in order to ensure that they move towards this fostering of unity?
Well, there has to be an intervention. So obviously, nation building is about intervention, no question about it. But it should also be looked in the context of the whole concept of colonial conquest. The way colonial conquest works is that it starts by destruction, destroying the people who are defending the land. And then after that destruction, then there's going to be the second most important destruction, which is the destruction of the indigenous governance system. And then they replace that with some kind of a packaged, nicely packaged governance system called democracy, for example. So today, 2022, there is no talk about the indigenous governance systems, for example. And that would fall under the Department of Arts and Culture. So they need to be bringing back these indigenous systems, like indigenous governance systems, for example, indigenous system of economy called Mafisa, indigenous enterprising culture called, let's say, for example, we've got people come from outside who do better than us in terms of business, because those people have got they've got enterprising culture. And our enterprising culture is kind of dead, so to speak. So we need to resuscitate that. And that would fall under the Department of Arts and Culture. So we need to have that economic renewal of the lives of people. You see, because remember that a citizen is a barometer of the civilization of society. If the life of a citizen is degraded, they live in a shack, for example, then it means the civilization of the society is meaningless. The talk about unity is also meaningless. The symbols are also meaningless.
And
so there's a connection there.
Dr. Henama, Dr. Zulu talks about this connection between the improvement of lives and these symbols. I wonder if you agree with that, and also if you can also then couple this question as well as you answer this question, is that how far do these monuments go towards fostering this kind of unity that government is trying to foster here, if at all, if they do have any impact at all?
I don't think we must just only look at fostering unity. The role of government is to create heritage to reflect the times such as South Africa's divided past. So fundamentally, I do not disagree with the concept that the department came with. But what I disagree is that you find that there are many museums that currently exist that we could have used to foster unity, that obviously require investment that we've not done, such as Brandfort. You find that, yes, the museum has been recreated, but there is nothing inside. Look at Vaihoek, where the ANC was formed. It's basically empty inside. So museums, heritage sites are very important to articulate the story of a country, especially it's important for the post-apartheid state to create such monuments and to create any activity it deems fits to unite the country.
And as you say, of course, that money could have gone towards the maintenance of these projects. But I'm keen to find out, Dr. Henama, I remember in 2012, there was that social cohesion summit where this dialogue was starting. There was a lot of conversation. Looking back to now, do you see what, became of that particular effort in order to start that conversation there? Are we seeing any material difference?
We cannot have social cohesion at the end. Social cohesion starts by creating a society where the distance between the rich and the poor is minimized. Then those societies almost naturally, are able to unite. Now, unfortunately, in the South African context, primarily the face of poverty remains primarily black and female and rural, and the opposite on the other continuum. So I'm just saying we cannot only utilize heritage as the only ingredient, or utilize sports as the only ingredient in trying to create this post-South African society. It takes much more, and economics plays a very, very important role in ensuring that we create the society where we all share in the wealth of the nation. Maybe obviously this is a topic much bigger for this conversation, but I don't think that we should put all the weight on a single ministry that create unity because that's your responsibility.
So, Dr. Zulu, when one then, looks at this entire project and the conversations that subsequently followed, would you say that are we having an honest enough conversation as South Africa about what will it take to get us to that point where you say that there needs to be cohesion, but there has to be that, that divide, that is then that gap that is then closed between the haves and the have-nots. The society needs to be in a certain position in order for us to have a better conversation around unity. Are we having that uncomfortable discussion about what will it take to get us there?
Very good question. And I would say we are not having enough conversation on this. And also, I would like to say that, there's a lot of talk. People talk about a lot of things in this country, especially politicians, but there's not a lot of action. So we need to have a conversation that is rooted in reality. There's also to it, for example, Nahana, which means to think. But if you analyze that word Nahana, there's two parts. There's Naha, which means ground or land, and then there's Na, which means the spirit of essence. So you can see that in an indigenous paradigm of thinking, you have your thinking has to be grounded on reality, and that has to inform the conversation. So, for example, the Department of Arts and Culture is an excellent department as far as I'm concerned, because it is more on the indigenous paradigm of thinking, of methodology. So it is an indigenous paradigm. They are the ones who should be looking at the constitution, because the constitution is a system of governance. So they should be saying there is also the indigenous system of governance. Does this constitution agree with it? They can spend money on that, for example. Right? Get people who are educated in indigenous law, that sort of stuff. For example, Clause 25 disenfranchises the indigenous people of the land economically, right? So that's why the symbols are going to be meaningless. Even the flag, 22 million rand flag, is going to be meaningless because it's not touching on the essence, on the core issues that face us as a people. So we are not having a good enough conversation, and we need to move in that conversation, and it has to be a conversation that is grounded in reality.
I wonder what are your thoughts on that then, Dr. Henama, because I was going to ask that, do you get a sense that the people that these monuments are meant to be for, do they identify with them? Do they feel a sense of ownership somehow? Do they understand why these monuments are even there at the back of what we've just heard now from Dr. Zulu?
The monuments in South Africa post-1994, I think there is that small disconnect between the community and these monuments because you find that they do not have the infrastructure within. They don't have multimedia interpretation center, which you go, I mean, not all of them, I mean, several of them. I mean, I'll speak about Brandfort, I'll speak about the Vaikhoek, which is in Bloemfontein. It does not have a world-class interpretation center where you can able to interact with the history. It's completely different with the Anglo-Boer War Memorial in Bloemfontein, which is world-class and has all the trappings that make you to have a wow experience. So I believe that in the planning of these museums, we need to have a multidisciplinary team that sits around and is able to identify, to ensure that these museums, they don't become white elephants, but they're integrated in the daily lives of our people. Tourists must be able to go there. Residents must be able to go there to have a true and a balanced articulation of the history, which is obviously very troubling.
All right, we just lost Dr. Henama there, and of course it was as we are ending off this conversation. So let me thank you to you both for your time this afternoon. That was Tshwane University of Technology Tourism lecturer. I do understand, Dr. Henama, you are back? Please round up your point as we were ending off this conversation. I thought you were gone now.
No, I just say, when we plan projects, let's have a multidisciplinary team, people from tourism, infrastructure, so forth, people who curate history, and even technology specialists that are able to curate using technology when we plan museums going forward, so that they're able to have a proper experience when you go there, and we don't use the young people who are technologically based. Thank you.
Something very critical that you mentioned there, to fuse technology and mix it with these particular lessons in history, as you say, because that is going to be quite important as, of course, even government talks about 4IR. So certainly this conversation is important and much needed. Thank you so much for that. That was the Tshwane University of Technology Tourism lecturer, Dr. Unathi Sonwabile Henama, and Madisebo University Research Institute Director, Dr. Zulumathabo Zulu. Thank you so much to you both.